Well, good morning. Let's see. Oh, that sounds good. Okay. Yeah, good morning. Good to see you all here this morning. I hope you're enjoying the cool outside as much as I am. I kind of dread a little bit the heat of the summer, so having a few extra cool days feels good to me. I hope it does to you. I know I told you last week that Daryl will be starting his Life of Moses class in the other classroom here, the fellowship hall. But unfortunately, he and Nina got home last night, and he wasn't feeling great and tested positive for COVID this morning. So I think they're doing all right, but we'll delay the start of that class at least another week and see how he's doing. However, we will be having a ladies class in the fellowship hall right now for any ladies that would like to attend that this morning, just all the way to the front section of the fellowship hall there. If you are staying in here this morning, we are continuing in the life of Christ. And I hope you were here last week. That'd be beneficial, but you're, of course, always welcome. Because this morning we're going to look at something I think is a nice companion to what we studied last week. If you remember, we looked at the situation where Jesus calmed the storm on the Sea of Galilee. And this morning we're going to see what I think is really, as I said, a companion, like a sister miracle of that miracle that has taken place kind of the night before this event this morning. Because while the calming of the storm on the Sea of Galilee shows Jesus' absolute, his deity for one thing, but also his absolute power and authority over the things of nature, over the natural world, the miracle we'll see this morning, I think clearly demonstrates, again, his deity, but his absolute power and sovereignty, his authority over the things of the spiritual world. Now, as I said, he's calmed the storm the night before. He arrives on the seashore, and now he's in the region of the Decapolis. This is kind of the southeastern edge of the Sea of Galilee. And this is a different sort of region that he's in now. This is predominantly a Gentile region. It's called the Decapolis, Deca, 10, Polis city, so it's the region of the 10 cities. They basically function politically like city-states. If you think back to your kind of classical history in Greece with Athens and Sparta and these cities function a bit like that, rather independently. But they're still under the overarching rule of Rome. So they're still paying taxes to Caesar and that sort of thing. But it's definitely a different area, as I said, predominantly Gentile. He's not going to be harassed by a bunch of Pharisees following him everywhere. So he gets a bit of a reprieve from that. As soon as he gets off the boat, he encounters an interesting situation. Right? Because two demon-possessed men come running up to him. They've seen Jesus afar off, Scripture says, and then as soon as he's getting off the boat, they're there waiting for him, and they kind of throw themselves before him. And as I said, these men are demon-possessed. Mark and Luke will focus on the man in, perhaps the more dire straits, the one possessed with a multitude of these unclean spirits. But Matthew makes clear there were at least two men there kind of in this condition. We've seen Jesus cast out demons before, but this might be a good moment to consider what we know about demons. This is one of those areas I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on. Certainly we don't know everything that we're perhaps curious about with that sort of world and these sorts of creatures, but Scripture does say a few things to inform us. And so as we study and consider sort of the nature of these beings a little bit this morning, I don't think we want to go too far down that rabbit hole. There are a lot of things we probably are kept for our own good from understanding. Um, and also, if we go too far along that path, there's not much we can say. We're just speculating past a point. But what does Scripture say about demons? I think it will help us kind of contextualize what the state of these men and the conversation that Jesus will have with them here. Yep. Oh. Okay. Yeah. They seem to be confined to a particular area, a particular time, because we really see this activity of these unclean spirits, as Scripture calls them, during Jesus' ministry, and a little bit into Acts with Paul, for instance. Yeah. So it seems like evil is always only allowed to do what God will allow it to do, which is one thing we'll see this morning. And so, yeah, their activities are probably confined to time and place, so that Jesus can demonstrate, his deity, his sovereignty. Okay. Ah. Hmm. Right. Yeah. 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 In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus talks about that, where, if a demon is cast out, it goes through the waterless or dry places seeking rest. And then when it doesn't find any, it takes seven more wicked than itself and can return. Yeah. So, host, it seems. One interesting thing about demons in general, and you see it more particularly here, is these demons have seen Jesus afar off. They have some perception of who he is, because to me that implies they have some kind of spiritual perception of Christ, that the disciples and we don't have when we're looking at his outward physical being, right? We'll also see this morning they fear judgment. They know judgment is coming. Have you come to torment us before the time, they say. They know who Jesus is. They recognize that he is their judge, and that there's an eternity that they know. We'll see Jesus give them a little leeway this morning, to his own purposes. But I think there's also an eternal place that they fear, where they will be bound, forever. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Certainly, the Jews, they kind of, for whatever reason, develop a concept, a view of demons in kind of the intertestamental time periods. We have some writings about their belief in demonic forces. In the Greek world, this area where Jesus is in the Decapolis, these are very Hellenistic cities, and so the Greeks believed in demons. Not so much the Romans. The Romans considered that more of a Jewish concept, actually. So I think they are writing out of their culture to some extent. But I think pretty clearly, these are intelligent beings that have certain abilities, like possession and so forth, and ability to perceive. Yeah, they had a certain view that a normal, like, physically based being does not. Yeah. Rituals. Whether or not those were. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's implied by Scripture is, yeah, because of their limited abilities and time and space to do things. Yeah, it seems rather limited to Jesus' time and the time of the apostles that we really see this. Certainly, there are a lot of questions about whether this is an ongoing phenomenon and those kinds of things, but there's not a lot in Scripture that makes that clear to me, which is interesting. How do they categorize them? Yeah, he's at their mercy, it would seem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems like they're just driving his behavior. Yeah, right. Yeah, he sounds very. I mean, it's a horrific situation, right? He sounds very animalistic in a way. You know, he says he's screaming, crying out day and night from the tombs. You know, this man has no rest. It's just a horrible situation. Doug? Um, those are the kinds of questions I have myself that I can't fully answer. It's because I'm sorry. Well, they're certainly tearing down this man. Probably, I assume both these men. We see other instances, just destroying people, destroying families in this way. Now, to what extent they're allowed to do that now versus other methods that God still allows until the time of judgment, I don't have enough perception or scripture to parse that out exactly. Um, my impression of Satan and the demons is that they will do everything they can to destroy anything they can anytime they're allowed to do it. And so I think that's kind of my overarching view on that. But parsing the particulars of whether this is a demonic influence or some other evil working, I think is hard to parse out. Um, I mean, yeah, consider the dire straits of this man. Naked, right? I mean, just to imagine living in tombs and caves, and the only thing the only textures you have on your body are stone, or sun, and wind, and sea. And so, the demons understand it. They can evidently perceive this reality, but of course the disciples can't. The keepers of the pigs can't. Any other bystanders. So he's doing it for the benefit of the audience, I think. Of this is the scope of the problem that we're dealing with in this instance. Just like there was the great storm, he commands it, and it's a great calm. Here, there's just like an entire army of Satan, army of evil here, that Jesus just casts out and is done with. All right, Terry? Hmm. Pigs drown. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. The demons seem to want to go into the pigs and, kind of continue their activities, I think, in as much as they can in a pig. But drowning themselves, in my opinion, is probably not part of their plan. Right? I think, it does seem there does seem to be a judgment there, right? And there was, again, sort of a cultural understanding that demons were afraid of water. And there may be a hint of an implication there when Jesus says that Matthew chapter 12, where he says they go through the waterless or dry places, that maybe they don't like water. I don't know. That's about all that I think Scripture says about that. But it seems to be a judgment on them to me, that this is what they wanted. They didn't really get it for more than a moment. Yeah. Yeah, it's not clear what happened to them when the pigs drowned, right? They've kind of lost their hosts. So.
I think in answer to that, at least what I believe, what I come to the conclusion of, is during old times, in the old Levitical law, pigs were considered unclean to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, by distinguishing Jesus' laws, that they eliminated the old Levitical laws and the unclean of the swine. So the unclean swine were allowed to take on the demons.
Oh, interesting. Because they were unclean.
Correct.
Interesting. Maybe so. It could be. I think from the passages we're not given a lot of details exactly. I think we can be certain they were not allowed to continue their activities as they had. I don't think Jesus just cast them out and they went into the next person in the next town over, because that wouldn't really be a great effect, right? So,
Again, just a visual of all those people,
yeah.
all those people were witnessing that the demons were in charge of the man, they were in charge of the pig.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. We asked the same question that they asked at the storming. Who could possibly do this, right? And I think it is, it's a powerful visual. It's interesting the demons, request this, but then they go straight into the drink and lose the host again when they die, evidently. But what happens to them? I think my guess is they probably were judged. There's some kind of imprisonment for them. It's just my personal guess. It doesn't say that in the text, but I don't think they're allowed to continue their activities after Jesus has cast them out. Ken?
I think this is very interesting because it's one of the few examples where the spiritual and the material come together.
Yeah. 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 Where they meet them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly beyond us to really quite figure it out, right? How do those things... Right. Yeah. Yeah, I would think the visual, right? Getting, the pigs allow people to see, well, it's not just him saying legion. There were a whole bunch of these pigs that ran down and drowned. So you see the scope of it, and you also see, well, that's kind of an end point, right? It's a vicious him, if you will. But he's already started down that path, right? Yeah, I wouldn't. We're warned against doing certain things, and certainly warned against where we allow our hearts to go, right? And at some point, we can